All right. First of all, welcome everybody. Welcome to all my colleagues, accountants in the middle of tax season. I know it's about to. This is like the calm before the storm. Things are starting to get crazy now with payroll and all that stuff. So I really appreciate that you made your time to come here today. Anyway, my name is Hector Garcia. I'll do some introductions a little bit later. So the name of this session is importing data from Excel or CSV into QuickBooks. And what I mean by Excel or CSV, I mean any type of spreadsheet. Sometimes CSV is the format that the bank gives you, but any type of spreadsheet, there's multiple levels of different types of spreadsheets, but an Excel file or a CSV file is the most common thing. This session is sponsored by Zed Systems, which is the maker of Zed Axis, which is one of the tools that I use in my toolkit that contains all the different options to do importing beyond the built-in tools that I'll talk about a little bit later on. All right, so let me go to the next slide here. About myself, real quick, I'm a partner at Quick Bookkeeping and Accounting. We're a regular, plain vanilla accounting firm. We do bookkeeping work, tax work, QuickBooks work, just like a lot of my colleagues here. However, we do have a division called Data Entry US. And basically, this is a concept that I came up with a couple of years ago that it specializes on doing outsourced data conversion and data importing and data entry. So basically, we used to do a lot of outsourced data entry from other accounting firms. We basically typed all the data into QuickBooks or into Excel for other firms, but we obviously over time we developed different skills to not do it manually. So we do some scanning of bank statements, we do some conversions into different formats, and we do some obviously some importing. So our firm is based in Miami. No data goes overseas. And what I'm going to show you is the stuff that we do. So I'm basically exposing our entire, not our entire, but most of what we have learned through the years to import data in order not to do manual data entry. Now, Zed Systems is a developer of Zed Axis software, which is the most important tool in my toolkit, which actually can import from multiple sources. It can do from Excel, CSV, even IIF into QuickBooks Online, and it can import into all versions of QuickBooks, all the desktop Windows versions, online, and it can even do zero. And Zed Access was voted top 10 apps for 2015 by QB Power Hour, which is a webinar series that I co-host. Anyway, zed-systems.com. You can download a free trial. We'll talk more about that as we go into more detail about that software. So the learning objectives are that you understand what are the built-in tools that we have in QuickBooks, and what are some of the third-party tools and how to use some of the third-party tools like Zed Access. We'll talk about some of my own techniques that I've learned over the years to do data entry and conversion for massive data into QuickBooks without doing the manual data entry. And then we'll talk about some basics of Zed Access. We'll kind of do an introduction of that particular software. So let me start with some general terminology. If I say QuickBooks Desktop, if I actually say QuickBooks Desktop, and I may do it inadvertently a few times during this presentation, I am specifically referring to all the versions of QuickBooks for Windows. So it could be Pro, Premier, it could be any of the industry editions, it could be Accountant Edition or Enterprise. So when I say the word QuickBooks Desktop, I am not talking about QuickBooks Mac. So I may mention QuickBooks Mac once or twice, but I'll specifically say what QuickBooks Mac can do and cannot do. So typically, we're very QuickBooks Desktop focused. Now, if I say QBO, I'm referring to QuickBooks Online, any version of QuickBooks Online. If I say QBO file or .QBO file, I'm referring to importing bank data into QuickBooks to be used via bank feeds, which is different than direct data input. If I talk about IIF or an IIF file, I'm talking about an old importable file format that QuickBooks had in order to import data into it. This is a very old school style format. However, it still works pretty effectively. So I am going to cover that a little bit. If I talk about third party, if you hear me saying third party or third party app. I'm talking about something that QuickBooks cannot do natively, that you actually need a third party tool, typically something that you have to pay for in order to be able to do that function. So if I say you need a third party app for that, I basically mean that QuickBooks standalone cannot do it. And if I talk about a CSV file, I'm talking about a comma separated values file, which is basically a spreadsheet that can be opened in Excel. All right, so that's a general terminology. Now let me talk about the agenda. So first, we'll do a quick walkthrough of the built-in tools to import lists. So lists, customers, vendors, items, things like that. And we'll talk about those. Those tools are in QuickBooks Desktop in all versions, basically Pro, Premier, Accountant, or Enterprise. Then we'll talk about the built-in tools to import transactions. So a customer is a list, an invoice would be a transaction. So we'll talk about the built-in tools to import transactions available in QuickBooks Accountant or Enterprise 2013 and above. Then we'll talk about IIF files, and we'll kind of go through real quick how IIF files work. I could spend a whole hour talking about IIF files, but since it's an older format, I will probably spend no more than 10 minutes on it. Then I'll talk about importing lists into QuickBooks Online using built-in tools. QuickBooks Online does not have any built-in tools for importing transactions. You would need a third-party tool for that. And lastly, we'll talk about my favorite third-party tool for importing transactions into any versions of QuickBooks, which is Zed Axis. So that's basically the agenda for today. And I know you're going to be asking questions, and I will try to I will try to answer some of the questions during the mini breaks that I have while I put the polling questions up. Okay, so let's start with why import the data. Very simple. This is sort of, I know, kind of low hanging fruit. This is not a high realization for you guys why we're importing the data, but obviously we want to save time. That's probably the number one reason why anyone would like to learn the skill of importing data. But the second reason is to increase accuracy. So even if it doesn't save you time, but information that is not subject to be changed by the accountant, like the transaction date or the payee name or the memo or the amount, that is going to come in completely 100% accurate when you import it. Maybe the only thing that will change is the account category or something like that, and that stuff that is not subject to change from the accountant, that stuff is going to come in very clean from the import. So that's why we will increase accuracy, and also offering a new service. So I know a lot of accounting firms that the minute we have that you run into the issue where we need to do something fancy with the data, accountants say, no, I don't do that. Go do that somewhere else. Go find a QuickBooks person that can help you with that. I just do taxes. I just do financial statements, whatever. So I think most of it is because you just don't know how to do it. And it's actually quite easy, which is sort of what I would love to teach you today. All right. So some scenarios that would make it a great thing, or that would resonate with importing data. So I'll talk about just 5 scenarios. There's many, but one of them is the end of the year. I need to import 12 months worth of transactions to do the write-up. For whatever reason, my client's bank cannot export the data into bank feeds, but it can export it into Excel or a CSV. So being able to use that Excel file to push it into QuickBooks, that's a great scenario, for applicable to what I'm going to teach today. Also, if you have a client that uses PayPal doesn't have a PayPal to QuickBooks import, doesn't have a direct import without the need of a third-party tool of some sort, but PayPal can export into Excel or CSV. So you could also enter that detail into QuickBooks that's from PayPal by using these skills. Also, another common scenario is a client has a QuickBooks data file. It's a complete mess. You don't even want to touch it. However, there's some useful information on it. There are some customer lists, maybe some open invoices, maybe the inventory happens to be correct and everything else is incorrect or whatever. So if you want to be able to export a list of transactions or a list of items or names or vendors or whatever from one QuickBooks file, you can import it on the next one by using some of the techniques that we're going to teach here. Also, if the client keeps a petty cash log in Excel, so if they have a pretty extensive Excel file where they have all the income and expenses that they have in cash, which you're not going to be able to import from any bank, obviously, because it's a petty cash. That's also a very useful scenario for what we're about to do. And then finally, client does all their accounting, quote unquote, in Excel, and they give it to you, and then you don't want to retranscribe the data. So that could be another opportunity to import into QuickBooks. So somebody was asking, can I go from Excel, from Enterprise to any other version of QuickBooks? And QuickBooks doesn't have any built-in tools for that. To go from enterprise to any downgrade, but you could certainly export the transactions and import them using these tools that we're going to show. All right, so let me start with list entries. Okay, this is the most basic of the imports. A list entry. There's a tool called Add Edit Multiple List Entries. It's a copy and paste style of importing. It's available in QuickBooks Desktop versions. Desktop means all versions of Windows 2011 and above. And Mac has a limited version of this feature that they introduced in 2014. You can import customers, vendors, service items, non-inventory parts, inventory parts, and assemblies, but the assemblies are without BOM item detail. So if you know about assemblies and manufacturing, you know what I mean by BOM. If you don't, I'll ask you to research it. You can customize the columns to match the spreadsheet, and there's a copy down feature that allows you to make massive updates. So let me start by doing that example. So I'm going to switch over to that QuickBooks, but I'm going to show you the item list that I'm going to import. Okay. So let's say, for example, this is the item list that I have. Okay. And I hope that everybody can see. Let me just zoom this in, make it a little bit bigger. Not sure how this looks like in other monitors here. So these are my inventory parts. These are the descriptions. These are the cost, the price, the quantity on hand, and the value on hand. Okay, so these are the typical things that we import into QuickBooks. So let me switch over to the blank file. And while that does load, let me see if there's any other questions that I have here. So somebody says, how can I import payroll into QuickBooks? So one of the things we'll discuss, I think, in one of the PowerPoints I have it, there's no way to import any payroll data into QuickBooks. So if you have an external payroll system like ADP or Paychex, you can import net checks that it can do as long as it can export that data, but you can't import any inside of the QuickBooks internal payroll system. The closest thing you have to import into QuickBooks and payroll, it's timesheets. Timesheets can definitely be imported to the payroll system. Somebody was asking, can I do timesheets? Yep. Through Zed Axis, you can do timesheets. Okay. So let me go into the item list here first and show you, I have no items, or I can just go ahead and delete some of these items. So that way we don't see any. Okay, I was doing some tests earlier. So we're completely out of items, right? We don't have any items here. I'll just leave that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the list menu and click on Add Edit Multiple List Entries. And then in here, I'm going to import some items. So I'm going to start with some inventory parts. Okay, and then what I need to do is I need to make sure that this spreadsheet here, or the QuickBooks spreadsheet, looks just like my data importing spreadsheet. So in my data importing spreadsheet, I have inventory part, description, cost, price, quantity on hand, value on hand. So I'm going to go into QuickBooks. I'm going to click on the top right where it says customize columns. And then I'm going to make sure this looks the same. So we have item name. I'll get rid of that. And then we also had description here somewhere. There it is, sales description. I'll bring that over. Let me move that up. And again, it has to be the exact same order. So we have item name, sales description, cost, sales price. And then we have, I think it was quantity on hand. So we have quantity on hand. There we go. And I'm going to move this down here. Perfect. And then I'll get rid of preferred vendor, income account, cost of goods sold account. Those are required. I need those. Asset account. I'll get rid of those here. I'll leave total value. Get rid of that. Okay, perfect. So there's one more very important one. If you're going to import an initial item list that contains quantity, so I'm going to import, for example, an inventory list. Very common, probably the most common. Initial inventory quantity on hand. I have to make sure that this as of date is added there, because QuickBooks will have to insert a journal entry or an inventory adjustment as of a specific date when importing that data. So here it is, item, description, cost, sales price, and quantity on hand. Okay, so let me go into Excel. I'm going to copy all this data here. I'm going to right click and hit copy. Okay, and I'm going to switch over to QuickBooks, hit OK here. Then I'm going to click on the top right button, right click, and click paste. Okay, so a couple of things, and they're important to know, and they're good to see these errors. Whenever you copy and paste anything into QuickBooks, dollar signs or that formatting doesn't work really well. So as you can tell, it sort of gives you an error because there's a dollar sign. So I have to make sure that whenever I'm formatting, that I actually remove any special numbers formatting. So this has to do with these numbers are here. Specifically, these numbers are here. So this is one of the major areas of frustration that first-time importers have, that this is not, how do I explain it? This is not published, right, in anywhere saying, be careful about, having the currency in there and that stuff. So that's an area of common mistake. So let me change that over by just selecting that, hit the drop down there, click number, and then I'm going to copy this information again, hit copy, and then come back into QuickBooks. Okay, and then hit paste. You'll paste over it, perfect. Then as of date would be like the beginning balance date. So for example, let's say this is 12/31/2015. All I have to do is change it in 1, and then I can right click on it and click copy down. And basically everything that I'm importing will come in under that date. And then I have to make sure that I have an income account, a cost of goods sold account, and an inventory asset account. Again, I just have to put it in 1 and then right click copy down. And basically what you're about to see is me importing all those items all in one shot with a beginning quantity on hand. So I'm going to click on save changes. It's going to go through the motions of importing. There we go. So I'm going to go into my item list. Now I got a full item list with quantity on hand. Then I'm going to go to report, inventory evaluation summary, and then I'm going to see all my items imported with their quantities, with their cost. So that's a typical thing that we import. Something else that's typical that we import is a customer list. So when I go here to customers, and then I'm going to click here on the top right, customize columns. One of the things I can also import, it's a beginning balance. So if I use this beginning balance as of date and customer balance, and I'm going to go ahead and remove everything else and just leave customer name and beginning balance just to show you. Okay, so I have name, opening balance, customer balance. Okay, and I'm going to make this a little bit easier. So assuming that I have it in Excel, right? Actually, I may not have one in Excel, but let's say if I have this in Excel and I have Hector and Mary or Manny, and then I'll have some beginning balances here. So 50,000 or 5,000 and 4,000. So if I imagine I have a big customer list with a big bunch of beginning balances, I can copy them, come into QuickBooks, and let me just make sure the customer balance is the second one, not the third one. I'll right click, paste, and then beginning balance or opening balance as of date, I can do the same thing, 12/31/2015, and then I can do a copy down and then hit save and close. Now the big question is, whenever I import an item list, a vendor list, customer list, whatever it happens to be, can I import it without opening balances? The answer is yes. You can absolutely do it without opening balances. That is completely and 100% optional. So you don't have to do opening balances. That's just completely optional. Okay, so that's sort of the first concept there. The second concept is if I import them with beginning balances, what happens to my accounting? So let me pull up a balance sheet here real quick. Okay, and basically what happens is here under opening balance equity, if I double click on that, I'm going to see all these inventory adjustments. They come in as an equity transaction. So you might have to change that to retained earnings or whatever if you have an issue with that going into opening balance equity. All right, so that is basically in a nutshell how do we import multiple list items using that tool. Okay, that's what it looks like. the summary about this is that you have to make sure that your columns in QuickBooks match your columns in the add edit multiple entry list. There's also something called the advanced Excel import. So I'm going to show you that one. And the advanced Excel import is not a copy and paste tool. I go to the file menu, I go to utilities, I go to import, and then I go to Excel files. Okay, and then I click here where it says advanced import. And basically, this tool is going to actually, this system is going to look a lot like Zed Axis, so I'll kind of show you that in a second. But what this tool allows me to do is take an item list. So I'm going to go ahead and browse, select my item list as here, same item list I was working with. Okay, and then I can do mapping. That's extremely important. Mapping means that I'm going to tell it. Okay, so I'm going to open that for context again. Let me open that list here. There's my item list from Excel. Okay, so on the mapping is what I say, you know, this is the item name, this is the description, this is the type, the cost, price. I have to tell it based on this header. So you have to make sure that you do in fact have a header. Okay, I'm going to make here yellow there real quick. You have to make sure that you have a header in order to be able to map an import like that. So I'm going to take my item list here, and then I'm going to go through here and say, well, this is my item name matches my item column. My description matches my description column. My account, in this case, it may be missing, right? So I have to make sure that in Excel, I add that account, or my cost of goods sold account, or my asset account. And then I have my on hand. There's my quantity on hand, and there's my cost. Okay, so this is how you use this tool. Now, the difference between using this tool and the add edit is that with this tool, you have to have every single column mapped out. In Excel, you have to have the data in Excel, and they have to be mapped. And if you have an error, it's going to give you a log file and tell you what didn't import. With going back for a second, with this tool, with the add edit, anything you're missing, you can still edit on the fly here, and you can add accounts or add and use that copy down feature. Okay, so that's kind of the two in a nutshell. The next one I want to talk to you about is importing transactions into QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, so with Batch Enter, that's the name of the tool. Batch Enter was introduced in Accountant Edition and Enterprise Edition only. So if you have Pro or Premier, this is not possible. You cannot use this tool. You will need a third-party tool like Zed Axis to be able to import transactions. But if you're using Accountant or Enterprise 2013 or above, and there's a limited access to this in QuickBooks Mac 2015, and QuickBooks Online doesn't have any transaction import. Now, this is the same copy and paste style, which I like. Columns have to be customized the same way. If you're working with QuickBooks 2013, you can only do checks, deposits, and credit card charges. If you're in 2014, 15, and 16, you can do invoices and bills, invoices, credit memos, and bills as well. So let me show you an example of that. So let me just go in here to make sure that I don't have, let me go into customers, and let me just make sure that I don't have any invoices, right? So I guess I do have some invoices here. Actually, let me switch to another company file. This will make a lot more sense. I'm going to switch to another company file that already has a customer list. And then I'm going to show you how to import invoices. So let me come in here and open up the spreadsheet that I'm going to import. So there are two types of invoice importing. And when we're talking about invoicing, it will work the same way with sales orders, with estimates, with purchase orders, with sales receipts. So any transaction like a purchase order, sales receipt, estimate, or invoice is going to work the exact same way. The difference is if you have single line items, that means that every invoice has a single line item, or every bill has a single line item, or every purchase order, sorry, not purchase orders, every invoice or bill has a single line item, you can bring them into QuickBooks using this feature. So I'm going to go to Batch Enter here on the Accountant menu, Batch Enter, and then I'm going to select, hit the drop down here and select Invoices. So notice these are my choices here: checks, deposits, credit card charges and credits, bills, and invoices. These are my choices. So I'm going to choose Invoices here. And again, the Batch Enter tool can only import invoices with single line items. So exactly what you're seeing here, single line items only. Okay. So when I select this information here and click on copy, then I can come into QuickBooks, and I have to make sure, before I did that, I kind of went too far there. I have to make sure that this matches: date, number, name, item description, and amount. So let me go back into QuickBooks, make sure that's all that all matches. So I have name, number, actually name should be on the top. Where's my date here? Yeah, so I have date, number, name, item. Okay, so we go date first, number second, name, and then I have my item. Then I have my description, and then I have my amount. I think these don't have quantities. Yep, these don't have quantities. They just have one lump sum amount. Perfect. So I can get rid of everything else. I don't need anything else. And then I'll hit OK. And then I'll go ahead and paste that now. Okay. Now, if my items are not in my item list, like in this particular case, I can just hit the drop down here and select the correct one. Okay. Because sometimes if you're importing from somewhere where your item list may be missing or for whatever reason, I can just come in here and select whatever the right item is, right? So let's say that's the right item. If it's not in there, I can create it on the fly by just creating a service item here, whatever it is that I'm going to do. Okay, and then after you get rid of all these reds, and these reds are extremely important. If you have reds, that means you're not going to be able to import all the information. So if you have reds, it's probably because your item list and your Excel somehow is not matching, and that's an extremely important piece. Your customer name list, your item list, that all has to match. Because if it doesn't match, then you have an underlying issue. Now it's kind of nice that I can change them on the fly as I'm putting them here, but then that's no longer importing. That's sort of quasi importing. But that's it. That's all I have to do. And then I'll go to in this case. I think I'm missing. No, I'm good there. So I'm gonna hit Save Transactions. I'll hit Yes, and then I'm gonna go into my Customer Center and go to Transactions and go to Invoices. Okay, and I'll click here All Dates. And then these are all the invoices that I imported. So this is actually that's the exception. I had done that before the test here. So this is the invoice that I imported, single line item. Okay, so a single line item that I imported. Another one. Okay, let me delete this one because I had done this one before to do a quick test. And then there's one single line item. So again, this tool here called Batch Enter allows me to import checks, deposits, credit cards, bills, bill credits, invoices, and credit memos, but only single line items. Again, only single line items. So if I have a spreadsheet that looks like this, and I have, for example, let me just zoom this in. It'll make a lot more sense when I zoom this in here. Put here 200. When I have, for example, I have invoice 1088 that has two line items. So very evident here. It's got two line items, right? So I have an invoice with two line items. I cannot use batch enter, right? My batch enter is going to create them as two separate invoices, and that could be a problem. So I'm going to talk about using a third-party tool to import multiple line items a little bit later on, but I want to just kind of focus on these tools that are here. The other piece I want to show you is doing deposits and checks. Okay, so let me go ahead and switch back into here, and then I'll click on checks, and then I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet that is sort of a typical spreadsheet that we pull with bank transactions. So I'll just make the assumption for a second that we downloaded our transactions from Bank of America or from a bank. And this is all basically debits and credits coming in from the bank, right? So this is what it looks like. Some have payee details, some don't, because some checks won't have payee information, whatever. So whenever you have data like this, which is bank data, it's basically going to be either a deposit or a withdrawal. QuickBooks can import it, but it can only do one type at a time. So it can do all checks in one shot and all deposits in another shot. Okay. So, all right, let me go through the questions. So somebody's saying, do you have to have Accounting Edition in order to import into QuickBooks? The answer is yes. This only works with Accounting Edition. So again, Batch Enter only works with Accounting Edition. Somebody else is saying, what other solution other than Batch Enter can I use for multiple line items? And then the only one that I'm going to show here is Zed Axis, which is a third-party tool that can do that. No built-in tool can do that. Somebody says, can I import sales receipts that are on CSV from a POS system? Again, with QuickBooks Accountant, you don't have the ability to do sales receipts, only do checks, deposits, credit card charges, invoices, and bills, you would need a third-party tool to be able to import sales receipts. Somebody says, can we add classes to the import? Absolutely. You can absolutely add classes to the import. That's actually one of the columns that is available there. Can I export receivable aging information into Excel? Well, we're not going to talk about exporting. That may be another class altogether, so I'm not going to cover Excel. Exporting. Somebody says, what about journal entries? Can I import journal entries? And I am going to give you two solutions for journal entries, so I'll talk about that briefly. Time is kind of flying by here, but try to see what else I can do here. Somebody says, provide your email. Yeah, I will towards the end. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So somebody says, what about QuickBooks Online? So again, QuickBooks Online does not have any built-in tools. So you can't do any of this stuff in QuickBooks Online without the need of a third-party tool. So like there's a lot of people asking, what about QuickBooks Online? So no, with QuickBooks Online, there's nothing like this. So don't even try it. Okay, so let me just show you a quick example of checks and deposits. Probably the most important one. And I have a 25-minute video where I explain this step by step in detail. If you email me, I will send you that video. Okay, really strongly recommend that if you want to do deposits and checks through Batch Enter, you may want to take your time and do it right. So I'll go ahead and send me an email and I will send you that video. Anyway, so let's do deposits first. So what I do is, in order to make this work, is I basically, in a nutshell, I take this spreadsheet that contains both debits and credits. Here under this drop down, under the filters, I'm going to click sort by smallest to largest. And basically, I'm going to see a bunch of credit and deposits on the top, and then I'm going to see a bunch of debits and withdrawals on the bottom. Now, I can do the copy and paste straight from here, or I can create separate spreadsheets just to kind of help me do it, which is what I've done. Whichever method you do is okay. What I wanted to show you with the filters, sorry that I got a little bit stuck there, is if I want to only import, let's say, 1 month's worth, here where it says dates, because I'm using the Excel filter, I can just uncheck here 2015, and I'll check, let's say, January and February, and hit OK. And then this will be filtered, and it won't show me anything past January and February. So that's what I wanted to show you in Excel if you wanted to just do a particular group of deposits. So the same thing here, I'm going to go ahead and click and only do January and hit OK. And then I have these are the deposits I'm going to bring in. So again, this is the deposits that I brought in from the bank. So this would normally be something I download through, Chase or Bank of America or whatever. And I'm going to send all these deposits to one specific income account. So I'm not too worried about the specific account it goes to. So I'm going to hit copy here. I have to make sure this matches again, date, payee, memo, amount. So in QuickBooks, I'm going to go to customize columns on the top right, and then I have date, payee, memo, and amount. Okay, the rest of the stuff I can get rid of, hit OK, and then I'll right click here and hit paste. All my deposits will come in. Again, for the sake of just kind of wow factor, I'm not going to filter this and only show January. I'll just do the whole year. Deposits are typically the easiest, right? Because those are not going to have a lot of payee information unless, it's a wire transfer of some sort, right? So I'm going to right click here and hit paste. And then under account, I'll just use a generic income account here. So I'm going to go here into my income account list, and I'll just put whatever, construction income. I'm going to right click on that, hit copy down, and basically that's going to take everything that I copy and pasted and put it into one income account. Again, if you have to reclassify those, there are tools in QuickBooks, which I don't think I have time to cover, that can do that sort of reclassification. Okay, so under payee here, anything that comes in red, you have to make sure. I may have to find out if my customer is correct, because it could mean that my customer is not in my customer list, or it means that I may have to create the customer. So it's possible that I have to create the customer like this, here customer, because when I copy and paste it, it wasn't in my original list. So that's another kind of thing to make sure that you look at, that your customer list is not going to be 100% in QuickBooks first. But also, I taught you how to import the list of customers and vendors through the add edit multiple. So you can, this one a quick technique that I use is I import my entire vendor list and customer list before using this tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save Transactions, hit yes, right? And you have to also make sure that you're doing it in the right bank account, because there's no undo button for this. So once you do it, that's it. So let me go into my, not reconcile, let me go into register. And then I'm going to show you, see, all my deposits are there. Okay, this is the only thing that I imported, all my deposits. Same thing with expenditures. So let me go back into my spreadsheet here, go into withdrawals. I'll select all this here. Then we have date, number, payee, memo, and amount. So in QuickBooks, when I do the import now for, in this case, checks, right? Because all bank debits are called checks. So that was date, I think number we have to insert in here because payees are going to have that. So it was date, number, payee, memo, amount. Date, number, payee, memo, amount. So date, number, payee, memo, an amount. And account is always going to be blank at the end. So I'm going to right click, paste here. Okay. Again, I may have, like, for example, I got see if some vendors are not there, I have to actually click on it and create the vendor. And that's, again, if I don't have my vendor list and I'm importing data with a vendor list doesn't exist, I have to go through all these reds here and make sure I create all these vendors. Right? So that's kind of a typical thing. And then now I have basically the memo, the date, the pay. I have all the stuff. All I have to do now is then do my classification. Okay, and that obviously that's a manual process. Now, if for whatever reason we happen to have those accounts in Excel, then that's gonna that's just gonna paste in there, and it's not gonna be an issue. But because we didn't have the expense categories in there, that's still a piece of the work that the accountant has to do, which is classifying all these things. Okay. Now, just for simplicity, I'm gonna go ahead and select office supplies, right click, copy down, and hit save transactions. I'm gonna put everything under office supplies. Again, I know that's not correct. And then go into my bank register, go to the bank register, hit checking, and then also see, okay, that I have where did I put it on the right account? I may have put it in my savings account. I think I did put it in my savings, but that's okay. So let's see, checking. Huh. Oh, there it is. I keep looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, so there's all my payments, all the checkings, right? That's everything that's in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit escape, escape, and that is how do you do deposits and checks through batch enter. Okay, let's talk about the next tool here. So that's batch enter. So we did mention, okay, so a couple things. Can do multiple line items, cannot do estimates, sales receipts, sales orders, purchase orders, customer payments, bill payments, payroll, transfers, and journal entries. All that stuff can be done with exception of payroll with a third-party import tool. Now, invoices, even if I can do single line items, I can't do memo field, PO number, bill to address, and any other custom field. So there's also some restrictions on the type of data that I can import. Now, I'm going to give you this link here. It's on the PowerPoint. It's called the IIF kit. Intuit gives an IIF kit that allows you to import all sorts of transactions via QuickBooks Desktop with an IIF, which I'm going to cover briefly because we're running out of time here. So let me escape here, and I'm going to cover it really, really briefly because this is an area of high need here, is how to import journal entries. So again, once you download that IIF kit, I'm going to hit escape here and close all this. Okay, I'm going to try not to go long, but I may go a couple minutes long because it looks like we have a lot of questions here and I want to answer everything. But so let me do journal entries here real quick. So for example, if I have a journal entry that looks like this, okay, not this one. Let me use this right here. Let's say I have a big journal entry that looks like this. Yeah, like this, right? So I have all my accounts here on this side, and I have an amount here, which could be negative or positive, or I could have them in debit and credit format, or I can have it in negative, positive format based on whether they're negative credit. Okay, so whichever way I do it, it depends on how I import it. So if I use a third-party tool, typically I'm going to need the account name and the debit and the credit. If I use the IIF, which I'm going to show you, I'm going to need this to be as a negative or a positive. So obviously a positive number is a debit, a negative number is a credit. Now, in order to import a journal entry, it needs to look like this. So let me close this window here. Minimize this, okay? And I'll just show a new one. So in order to import a journal entry, this is a very tricky process. Okay, let me close this. So you have to grab the IIF file that comes in the import kit, and there's the link I gave you, and there is an IIF file here called journal entry. So you grab that file and you drag it over to QuickBooks like this. I mean, sorry, to Excel like this. And then this is basically what it will look like. Okay, it will have a bunch of random headers here, and you really don't understand that stuff, and stuff here that really nobody understands. But it will have things here that we do understand. We'll have a date, an account, and an amount. Now, I edited one to look. So I basically took that and I copy and pasted my information, and I created one spreadsheet that looks like that one journal entry that looks like that big spreadsheet. So let me just show it to you real quick. So I took this big spreadsheet, that is a journal entry I want to bring in, and I brought it in as an IIF file, which looks like this, using that kit that we showed you. Again, and if this is too fast, just email me and I can send you a copy. I can even send you a copy of this one as a template, because this will be very useful to have this template. So as long as you have this information here, these headers that are here, and this information that is here, and again, if you email me, I can send you that template, no problem. Then I have my accounts, and then I have the amounts in negative positive format. Then I'm going to go into QuickBooks. Let me pull up a balance sheet here real quick to make sure that we don't have any data here. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. Then I'm going to go to File, Utilities, Import, IIF files. And then I'll click on my General Journal Entry IIF, hit Open. Okay, I have it open in Excel. I have to make sure I don't have it in Excel. Okay, very important point there. And then I'm going to try this again. File, Utilities, Import, IIF file. There it is. Hit Yes. And you should now see all these accounts into QuickBooks, and I can double click on any of these and it'll take me to the journal entry that I can open, and we can see what it looks like. So this is what we just imported. So again, the only way to import journal entries into QuickBooks right now is through IIF. Again, it's that big that you have to convert from your regular spreadsheet into this file format. And again, you can download that in the IIF kit. The link is in the PowerPoint. Okay, all right. We're a little bit behind time here. So IIF, again, the benefits are that you can import all these formats that you see here, all these lists you can see here, and a lot of all the transactions you see here. So there's a lot of things you can import through IIF, and again, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to make sure the spreadsheet looks a very specific way. This is why, and there's some limitations. Intuit doesn't support it. This is why the best way to import data that you can do through batch enter or you can do through add edit, it's by using Zed Axis. Real quick with QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online has built-in tools for customers, vendors, chart of accounts, and product and services. You can import bank transactions as long as you have a CSV file, but they don't import, they come in through bank feeds. So you still would have to classify each thing and put a vendor into each transaction. Again, if you want, I have a full video on that. If you really want to me go into detail on that, just email me and I'll send you a video on that. So my toolkit is QuickBooks Accountant Edition, which is exactly what I showed you. All these tools are available. Again, we had to condense a lot of things into 1 hour. So obviously this is a too compressed version of a webinar, but again, it's just 1 hour. So, and then the other important tool that I use is Zed Axis. So every time I said, hey, you can't do this, you need a third-party tool, you can't do this, you need a third-party tool, that's exactly what I meant. So this is one of the third-party tools that is here. All right, so let me open this up here and go into QuickBooks. I'm gonna go ahead and close all my spreadsheets and show you the process of using Zed Axis. Okay, so again, the premise here is that we have certain transactions that we cannot import through QuickBooks Desktop. One of the transactions is a sales receipt or an invoice with multiple line items, or maybe a sales order from a shopping cart, or maybe checks with splits. Things like that cannot be imported through built-in tools. The built-in tools that I showed you, have some limits. So by using Zed Axis, which is this tool that you're seeing here, basically what you do is you can connect to QuickBooks Desktop or to QuickBooks Online. This tool, the reason why I like it versus other tools are in the market is because it's a one-time purchase and I don't have to pay per company, per month, or anything like that. So to me, that's kind of a big deal. All right, so let me go into my invoices here in QuickBooks. Let me go to customers and let me just make sure I don't have any. I'm going to go ahead and delete all these invoices just to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and delete them all. That way we have no invoices. Okay, delete that and delete that. Okay, so let's say I have a spreadsheet for, again, this could be sales receipts, this could be purchase orders, this could be sales orders. So I have a file that looks like this, which basically has a bunch of dates, name, customer name, item, and amount. I'm gonna open it in Excel so it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, so if I have multiple line items, or I want to import purchase orders or sales receipts or sales orders or bills with multiple line items, like in this example, I would have to use Zed Axis. So basically how this works is I'm going to click on import, then I'm going to click here where it says browse, then I'm going to select the spreadsheet that I want to import. So I'm going to put here invoices with multiple line items. I'm going to see a preview down here in the bottom of what the spreadsheet looks like. So what you're seeing here is basically what the raw spreadsheet looks like. Okay, and then where it says choose mapping, this is where I can have a preset mapping. So for example, I already have a preset mapping here, and I'm going to click on edit, where basically I tell it, look, my customer reference full name is called name in my spreadsheet. Again, we're talking about that column here called name. And then my transaction date is called date on the spreadsheet. Now, this stuff looks like Greek when you see it like this, but when you see it like this, it'll make a lot of sense. So basically, what I see here, this is the Zed Axis website, and this is their knowledge base where they actually take the QuickBooks invoice, and you see in red, right, customer reference, class, terms, description, everything you see in red is a translation of how this looks like in the internal coding of QuickBooks when you're going to import a transaction. So if what you're looking to insert, it's in the terms reference box or in the other reference box or in the FOB reference box, whatever is it that you want to import this information, you would use this as a reference point when you're doing your mapping. So again, for example, my item reference, you see here, item ref, item ref, will be my item name. So in here, if I scroll down to item reference, actually, let me scroll down a little bit there you go. Item reference full name, I click the drop down and I select item, which again in my spreadsheet looks like this, item. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, there's sort of a lot of moving parts here. This software, it's a little bit takes a little longer to get up and running. But if you watch a couple of videos and you see those sort of cheat sheets are on the website, this stuff becomes pretty easy to use. And then here where it says more options, I can choose to give it a couple of pieces of additional info. I can say, listen, if the item doesn't exist, go ahead and automatically create my item. Right? So I want to automatically create it as an inventory part or as a service, whatever. That's really important because if I'm gonna create an item as an import, Zed Axis needs to know where in QuickBooks, where in my chart of accounts, the item is going to point to. So that's an extremely important piece of the equation here. So just make sure that I have all the data in there. And then what I'll do is I'm going to click on import, and it takes about a minute to do. And I'm going to go ahead and click close the poll. And this is basically what it looks like while it's importing. If there's any errors in the process, like the item name is too long or something like that, I'll walk you through it so I can actually make those corrections as I go. Again, importing is not an exact science. Let me go back into the spreadsheet here for a second. There's a couple of really important points I want to make before we close this up. Again, I think one of them, main concerns here is, you know, if I have QuickBooks batch enter tool, why would I need a third party tool? And in a nutshell, I think that if you can manage to import everything within the built-in tools batch enter, I strongly recommend that you do. So don't look into third-party software if you can do everything, um, everything within the built-in tool. However, if you need to pull extra transaction types, or if you don't want to mess with the IIF stuff, now IIF it's a possible thing you can do. But if you don't want to mess with the IAF stuff and you want to use the extra transaction types, that's a good scenario where you can use Zed Axis. The other piece is QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online, and this is on their website. This is a list of all the supported transactions. QuickBooks Online can only import CSV files for bank feeds. You can't import invoices, can't import expenses, can import bills, anything like that. Again, you still need a third-party tool to do that. And there's a big third-party tool out there called Transaction Importer Pro that is very similar to Zed Axis. I think it does about the same thing that this can do on the importing side, but Zed can also export. And one of the things I like is with Zed, I don't need a per company per month pricing. So as you go through the Zed Axis website, you can actually pull up, and again, I think we're going to email you that link. You can pull up every cheat sheet, right, for every single transaction, and what they're called. That way, when you do the spreadsheet mapping, you match it to the area in the invoice that you want to import, and you can do the same thing with invoices and with bills. You can also import journal entries through Zed Axis as well without having to mess with IIF file. And you can also import timesheets. That's actually kind of the big ones. Very common thing people ask for is timesheets. Again, this course, it's a super compressed version of what would be a complete importing course. Again, unfortunately, we only have 1 hour to present it, and I have a lot more tools in my toolkit. And I also think that going deep in detail into each batch enter or add edit with all the different options could also be a very useful thing. So make sure you give the feedback in terms of what else you would like to see. I strongly recommend that, again, you download a 30-day fully functional trial for Zed Axis. You can do a lot of interesting imports. If you have a strange file type and you're not sure what approach to take, whether you're going to use IIF or you're going to use Zed Axis or you're going to use batch enter, regardless of what you're going to take and you're not sure which way to go, there's my email. It's hector@dataentryus.com. Steve from Zed Axis is here. So you can also use his email. Steve, did I miss anything you think that was important to mention? Maybe the price, right?
No,
Maybe the
yeah,
price.
no, we've had a few questions about price, but yeah, I've answered as many of those as I can on chat. It's 195 for the importer. That's the starting price, and we have a 30-day free trial that you can download from the zed-systems.com website. So we've mentioned that in some of the chat. So you can pick up that URL if you need to. So please go give it a try, and if you need some help, then I can do remote support with you to help you through getting used to that and getting it working for you.
Right,
But
absolutely.
thanks,
Like,
Victor. That was excellent. Really
no,
good.
no problem. We're not trying to sell you on the software. Of course, Zed Access is sponsoring the webinar, so we had a piece devoted to using that third-party tool. But the important thing is that QuickBooks can do some things, and hopefully that quick fly-by-night version of it gave you some insight in terms of what QuickBooks can do. Again, use me as a resource. Email me. I'll help you choose the right software, even if it's not Zed Access. And Steve, I know you don't like for me to say that, but you know what I'm all about here. So just email me saying, Hector, this is my scenario. What do you recommend? I don't mind at all. I'm giving you some information, and also I have some videos published in my YouTube channel that go into detail on specific areas of QuickBooks and how to import them. So one of the answers I may give you is just access to that to those emails, and maybe some of the articles are written and that sort of thing. So let me try to see. I think before I get kicked out, see if there's any major questions I have to answer. Let me see. Somebody says, "Oh, one-time cost is a definite big plus." Yep, that's kind of the great thing I like about it, that you don't have to pay it a couple times. Oh, somebody says, "Can this work with QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks Premier?" The answer is yes. Does it work with QuickBooks Online? The answer is yes. Can I import an IIF file into QuickBooks Online? The answer is yes, only with Zed Axis. Could I? How do I upload a journal entry? Okay, so uploading a journal entry is not in the accountant menu; it's an IIF file. Somebody was asking me about that. Let me see what else I have here. Somebody says way too much information, too little time. I agree. sorry, sorry about that. I think I'm all set. I mean, there's a lot of other questions here, but I don't think I have time to answer them.
All right, so yeah, that's going to wind us down. By the way, what you could see here on the upper right was actually made available as a promo, so you'll get an email from us following the course that's asking you to fill out the evaluation to let us know what you thought, and that will be a link when you get that, where it says click here to download. That will actually be a link. So keep an eye out for that, and we are very much appreciative of the discount that you've been able to offer us. So thanks to Zed Axis for making this available to our members, and hopefully a lot of you will go and take advantage of it. We'd rather drink from a fire hose around here, so we packed a lot into an hour, and we appreciate everyone sticking with us. So we have another class taking place right now. It's called Who's Who in Online Accounting, Xero versus QuickBooks. So I think you'll get some interesting content there. If you're interested in another hour of content, log in. It's not too late. And I'm seeing all the comments here. Lots of exclamation points and thank yous and the like. So we'll look for more where that came from. Plus any other feedback you want to share. Be as candid as possible. We take it all to heart, and we're looking forward to seeing what you say. So that's going to do it.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Hector.